In this unit, we're going to explore the topic of nutrition. For most of us in this class, we will encounter roles in nutrition coaching. Very few of us will be pursuing degrees in becoming a registered dietitian, so therefore we can't provide meal plans for people. However, I can still ask a person to keep a food record or a food log, and I can do this in an app such as MyFitnessPal, or I can record on a piece of paper. If I'm recording it on a piece of paper, I ask people to write down what they ate, how many grams of carbohydrate, protein, and fat were in each of those foods for the given serving size, and what they were feeling at the time. From here, I can use this to coach. Overall, the macronutrient ratios should be divided in a fairly predictable manner. Carbohydrates should be 40 to 65% of the diet, fat 20 to 35%, and protein 10 to 35%. We can see some wide overlapping ranges because people's different activity levels and sports may influence the ranges to go one way or another. However, if we are out of range for a prolonged period of time, it's very likely that we could see a nutritional imbalance that can lead to some problems down the line. In order to calculate this from a food log, I would get total grams of protein, fat, and carbohydrate for a day. You can multiply this by the number of calories per gram. So there's 4 calories per gram of protein, 9 per gram of fat, and 4 per gram of carbohydrate. This will give you the kilocalories from each macronutrient. From here you can add these numbers to create your total calories, and then divide each number by the total to get your final percentage. In this sample diet, we can see 24% protein, 27 fat, and 50 carbohydrate. We can go back and compare this to our previous ratio pyramid to determine whether this person's diet is within a macronutrient balance or not. If it's outside, we would probably coach them towards more of a balance. The other area that we can use for coaching is a resource such as My Plate. So in any given meal, does my food look like a plate? For example, let's say that I have fruit and eggs for breakfast. That would be a fruit and a protein, but I didn't consume any carbohydrates or vegetables. In my next meal, I'd want to balance my carbohydrates and my vegetables so I can obtain an entire plate that's balanced throughout the day. Ideally, we'd have a little bit of everything at each meal, or a little bit of most things at each meal, because the body cannot process all of one thing at one time. For example, let's say I ate 100 grams of protein for breakfast and no protein for the rest of the day. My body wouldn't be able to process that, and therefore it would either expel it or store it as adipose tissue. Finally, in coaching, I need to look at the different kinds of influences that determine a person's intake. For example, what is their schedule? Is this person working overnight shifts and therefore their breakfast time is when your dinner time is? What are their cultural influences? Does this person have a tendency towards particular foods over others? What did their friends and family do, and how big of a role does this play in their choices? Usually this plays a fairly large role. It's common to hear people say, well, but I have kids, I can't eat healthy. The strange thing is that if you show kids fruits and vegetables from an early age, they'll usually self-select them, even over sugar. And then you have to dig into a person's beliefs. For example, I was coaching a client and she was having 4 cups of hot chocolate for dinner every night. She was achieving her goals. She wasn't having trouble sleeping. She didn't have any adverse effects. Her plate was balanced. Her macronutrients were balanced. But she seemed to be irritated by this 4 cups of cocoa at night. And it turned out that this was inconsistent with her belief of what she thought was healthy, and it was important to her to be healthy. So in this case, we didn't see physiological side effects, but mentally she was not okay with this practice, so we needed to coach her to some different practices. And finally, we need to consider what a person's doing for working out. There's the old equation, calories in, calories versus calories out, which does have some merit. There are some ways around this as well. But if we have a bodybuilder, they're going to consume a very different diet than an endurance athlete. That is why we have such wide ranges in our macronutrients. Thank you for joining me in the Introduction to Nutrition Coaching. If you have questions or are looking for some further resources, please reach out to me and I will point you in some possible directions. Thank you.